And the way that you can do that and expand their mindset so that they are not just stuck within the four walls, either of their house or their community, and they can see beyond that, is helping them discover, whether that's from home virtually or whether that's actually traveling.
Alexa Maria Rathbone Barker, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Did I get the full name right?
Yeah, you did. That was a
That's the most important
great
question.
job.
Good. So we rehearsed a bit, and like I mentioned, it was like the diction exercises. I think I might even just use that on a daily basis now. But it's a fantastic name. Even an even better name is the name of your company, tripAbrood, which also really rolls off the tongue, and I just love. So we have a lot to talk about, all the way from your financial times with Bloomberg, now to tripAbrood, to your own personal experiences with the challenges of family travel, to now solving it for a lot of others. But really, the whole industry is a fascinating one, especially in 2021. And we have an opportunity here to be almost like sort of like hypothesized prophets on what's going to happen, as you're dealing with this on a daily basis. So before we do all that, you go to Cuba in 2008. Talk to me about your own sort of history and what that trip was for you, because I always love starting with a fun fact.
Yeah. So you asked me a great question. A little known fact about me. Well, I'm half Cuban. So my mum was born in Cuba. My granddad was very senior in the American government within Cuba, and they were exiled in 1960, as were many Cubans, and were welcomed into America. And ever since I was born, we'd always had this desire
Alexa
to go back to
Maria
Cuba,
Rathbone
but for
Barker,
obvious
how are you?
reasons, that was a challenge. And I became the first family member to go back in 2008 with my husband. And it's hard to describe, but it was like that feeling of when you haven't discovered half of you, and there's things that you don't know why you do certain things, why you react certain ways, and then you go somewhere and it's like being plugged into an electric socket. For me, arriving at Cuba and traveling around Cuba was literally like becoming alive. And it was the most incredible experience. And we revisited the old family home. We kind of stepped into where my grandparents were married, the church they were married. And it was super nostalgic. And we were kind of sending, at that time, sending photos was a challenge. So we then came back and created sort of like photo books for the family. And it was the first time since they left Cuba that they could see the old road, the old town, the coffee plantation, all of that sort of stuff. So it was incredible. But I think having that sort of culture where I know that I'm half English and I'm half Cuban, two very, very different cultures, for me has always been, I've always been a bit eccentric and a bit different. And it was great to realize why.
Unbelievable. So, Alexa Maria, I really want to talk about your experience with the Bloomberg, but even more than that, right now, I'm really excited to spend some meaningful time talking about travel, talking about tripAbrood. Before we talk about COVID-19 and the industry of travel, you're making a clear distinction between our personal travel, our business travel, and family travel. Why are they different?
Yeah. No, great question. I think that distinction is something that hasn't really been made in the industry to such a degree before.
Right.
These have sort of been bucketed into travelers. And when you go on an online travel agent, it's a one-size-fits-all model. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. You ask the three questions: where are you going? When are you going? With whom? And then you get the list of options that you trawl through. The challenge with families is the complexity of traveling with children. The fact that you've got different ages, you've got different desires, you've got competing interests, you've got what the adults want, you've got what the children want. Then as the children grow up, those needs and wants change. And as a parent, I have never been a parent of an 8-year-old before. My child becomes 8, but my understanding of what an 8-year-old can do is completely fresh. And so the amount of time it takes parents to work out what is the most suitable holiday for their family needs takes an extraordinarily long time, on average about 30 hours of research, pure research time, to get to a point.
Really? 30 hours?
That's on average, yeah.
Wow. And is that because of the, I'm guessing it's not because of the, the clashing personalities and every person wants to do something else, but it's also because of, accessibility issues, and you need to make sure that you have a place that is both suitable for a toddler and a teenager and, a first grader, and something that the two parents can potentially even enjoy if they can allow that for that trip. So what's been happening today? What are some existing, solutions that people have offered, and what is sort of the inspiration and motivation for starting tripAbrood?
Yeah, so at the moment, what has happened is that parents have overweighted coping mechanisms to help them make that decision, which is essentially a compromise decision. Because as you point out, there is nowhere perfect for parents with a teenager, with a toddler, maybe a 5-year-old. It's all about what are the things that I'm willing to compromise on, and what are the things that I'm not willing to compromise on. It's that mental arithmetic of actually this place
Right.
seems to fit the most things, and I feel like that probably would be a good thing for me to go to. And what parents have had to layer in a lot of
Right.
is parents like me, recommendations. So if I speak to a parent, I think they're like me, they've got a similar family makeup. If they liked it, I'm probably going to like it too. So parents have gone down that road. Another
Yes.
they've gone down is if I've been somewhere before and it's worked, I'm going to go back again and again because I kind of guarantee myself a good stay. Now that's a positive because you know you're going to have a good experience. It's a
Right.
negative as well because you repeat the same thing year after year. And then you've got a third bracket of parents who have given up on holidaying entirely and basically say, we're not going to go on family holidays until our kids are older. And these were these three buckets of
Right.
people that I found as I toured around the country and started, fleshing this idea out. And it kind of goes to why I founded tripAbrood, which was from my own personal experience as a mum of 3 when I was working at Bloomberg and researching a particular family holiday. We were going back to Hong Kong, and I had run the Hong Kong office for Bloomberg, and we were taking back our third child. And I spent 6 weeks, and I counted the time, on my commute back and forth into London, researching a hotel with a room that fit 5 people in Hong Kong Island with a swimming pool. That was my criteria, full stop. It took me 6 weeks to find
Wow.
one place. And then at the point of booking, they turned around and said, it's going to be $500 extra for a cot bed for your son. And at that stage, I
Right.
gave Airbnb'd it, self-catered. I didn't want to self-cater, but it was that aha moment of having, I've worked in an industry where complex data sets is just a given. But what is also a given is that the customer, in our case, in Bloomberg, it was the financial professional, has an easy way to understand complex data. And that's our job. That was our job at Bloomberg, to translate data into a meaningful way that financial professionals could make financial decisions. And yet I looked at the online travel
Right.
industry and I thought, there's all this data, there's all this information, and yet there's no way for me to understand with all of this information what is right for me and my personal needs.
Right. I think that two things that you said before, by the way, that are particularly interesting for me, because I always, I spend most of my time when I talk to startups thinking about the problem and really identifying the pain point and how does the customer behavior has potentially shifted. And I think that what you outlined here is that the customer behavior shifted in two very, very important ways. And it's differentiated in two important ways. One is that, unlike most travelers, if you ask the average, young traveler or the single traveler, what is their priority, it probably would also be to experience something new, right? To go somewhere they haven't been before, to experience a new culture, new whatever. And yet you're saying here that we have this whole cohort of people, this whole population that is the last thing they want. When they find something that works, they want to stick to it because that guarantees them another great stay. And now thinking of all of the young families that I'm saying, it makes perfect sense. I can definitely see why that is a priority. And the other priority is, some people like to wander off and not plan ahead and just explore and experience. What you're saying here, no, we plan ahead and we actually take advice from others so strongly, because if somebody else that has a family that is similar to my demographic, right, with my age group and not same number of people, and they had a good experience, I'm gonna trust them, almost as if it's like a friend giving me a personal recommendation. So I just want to make that clear distinction, because for me, those are some of always the important pieces of identifying those real pain points. And I just couldn't agree more with that mindset.
Yeah. And one thing I'd layer in as well is everything you've said is is bang on. But then in addition, those people that are now almost de-risking the holiday and looking at how can I make sure that this is a good experience.
Yes.
Previously,
it's about de-risking the holiday.
It is, exactly. But previously, they were pretty risky, i.e. before kids, and all the stories are the same, right? We used to travel the world, we love travel, we're really passionate about culture. Yeah. Like, you've had that experience before you have kids, and then you have kids, and it's almost like the travel world ends, and your experience of exploring the world ends, and then you basically just make do until your kids are old enough to do something with the meaningful, or until they've left you, and then you end up being that sort of like, actually my kids are at university and now I can travel again as an adult. And I think that is such a shame, primarily for the children, which is what an amazing opportunity we have to educate our children on diversity and difference as they grow up. And the way that you can do that and expand their mindset so that they are not just stuck within the four walls either of their house or their community, and they can see beyond that, is helping them discover, whether that's from home virtually or whether that's actually traveling.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, 2020 hits, traveling is halted. You're running a tripAbrood company. You're growing, yet all of a sudden you have to do some recalculation and figure out how do you adapt as probably the industry that was hit the hardest than anyone could have ever thought. So, what is your interpretation of it as running this company, and what actions do you have to take in order to mitigate that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been really devastating being in the travel industry almost as a newbie, because I've my experience is predominantly fintech, and I've come in disrupting travel from the outside, and just to see so many travel businesses over the last sort of couple of months go under, at the moment, it is hugely challenging for the industry as a whole, because when people are not traveling, you're not getting revenue through. Essentially, it's just firefighting. It's crisis management. How do I get to the next stage? And for us, we've been lucky in that over this time, we were always building a product. We were always going to be about how do you truly understand your customer, which is in our case, families, and understand their complexity, and then match them to the best places for them. So it's those two worlds: the traveler and the holiday, the property, and how do you bring those two together seamlessly? And so we've been funded. We've been going through that kind of test and learn iterative process, and now we're coming out of it, with the future in sight, with vaccinations, and with clear signs from the insights that we're getting from our partners that travel bookings are starting to pick up. The sentiment is increasing, and interestingly, particularly for families. So families are leading the recovery in the UK out of all different traveller sets. So they are currently the traveller type that's booking the most holidays. And so for us, that's really encouraging. And I think it is back to that point that, there's almost an intrinsic need, and that has been, I think, a reality that families have realised even more, which is that, having been cooped up at home, one of the ways to just, when you've been cooped up, is to kind of go and just break through the mold and explore. And I think that's going to be one of the things that we're going to be seeing families and all travellers do, is they can travel again. That pent-up demand is certainly there, and people will be wanting to book holidays. But yeah, so I mean, it's the challenge for us really has been the testing and learn process, because you're not testing and learning with a lot of people coming through your product, because people don't want to book travel. So we've had to be really experimental in how we've gotten feedback from users, how we've tested the concept, and how we've come to a point where we know there's product market fit.
100%. So tell me a little bit about the customer journey. How does the family actually get to the end result of booking that, and not even the booking, but even the matching process? So how do you go from now the 6 weeks down to possibly even a single session where you find the right match?
Yeah. So what we do is we use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data to be able to understand a family and match them to the right property. In detail, what that is essentially it's a digital assistant, and we call our digital assistant Sky. And we've created Sky to talk to families in a way that a real travel consultant would talk to you. And so we're recreating that sort of dialogue you get with a human being digitally and at scale, because millions of customers can speak to Sky at the same time. And then as they go through that process of speaking to Sky, we obviously then use all that information that we've spent a year testing and learning on how do you recreate that dialogue in a meaningful way for families. And we've created a recommender engine. And the recommender engine is fed by our partnership with the likes of Expedia Group. So we have access to 700,000 properties. And we access those 700,000 properties, have all data sets and reviews on those properties. And then we're able to, within seconds, match all the information that families have given to all the properties that are available and give them a selection of 5 to 6 matches that are the best for their needs.
That's very, very cool. I think that what you're doing is really interesting, and I think that one of the most interesting pieces here is, and you said this before, you're an outsider coming in to disrupt the travel industry. So I'd love to hear your personal experience coming in. You know, you're at Bloomberg, you're in finance, you work with data and the numbers and all that fun stuff, and you're saying, you know what, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to go to an industry that I don't know much about. I just know my own personal pains, and you become a thought leader in that industry. What is the process of that like? How do you even get started, and how do you know where you're supposed to be going? Because it's a whole new world.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I give when people, kind of ask me about my journey is, for me, it wasn't about I want to disrupt travel. It was actually I've experienced a pain point that is really significant for me, and I'm going to validate and test whether other people have that pain point. And that was my starting point. And as I then realized that actually 90% of parents that I spoke to had exactly the same issue. And those, 10% of people that didn't had the disposable income to pay for a travel consultant to do the work. So people that were actually, looking to book their own holiday all concurred the same thing, that I had the same experience as me. And then you scale it out globally. And then I started testing the hypothesis through research. So I spent 3 months in the British Library. I took out every single document I could around travel, family travel. I very quickly realized there is basically no data on families. There's no understanding of the family market. So there's only one article in the whole of the British Library, which is from 2015, which talks in any way about families. And on the face of it, you think, well, if people aren't talking about it, maybe it's not that interesting. But for me, I was like, that was a big aha moment. I was like, this is ace. If there's such a dearth of information about families, how can they be serviced in a proper way?
Right.
And obviously there's a huge opportunity there. So then I explored, I spoke to some investors very early on, and also some financial professionals, got some travel professionals, got some travel advisors on board. And for me, it was all about, okay, the first people I need in my business, because I'm coming from outside, is industry thought leaders that are inside the industry at the moment, and recognizing right at the beginning that I can come from outside and disrupt, which is a great lens, but at the same time, the travel industry has been going for 20, 30 years online. And I need to surround myself by people that have been there and done that and will tell me all the pitfalls. And that I think was probably
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that was a good move.
I love that. Alexa Maria, 20 minutes go by very, very fast. And I have the most important question that I always have to ask. So, given the great journey that you've had, the great passion that you bring to what you're doing, I'd love to hear your take on the 3 words that you would use to describe yourself, or if I ask anybody around you, how would they describe Alexa?
I think resilient. I'm thinking of what people have called me: resilient, determined, and mission driven.
There's a hyphen there. I love that. Alexa Maria Rathbone-Barker, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for being generous with your time. I can't wait to see travel come back. I can't wait to travel myself. I can't wait to see, families use tripAbrood to travel. And I think that what you're doing is really fantastic. It's really smart. I think there's definitely a huge market for this, and I think more importantly, you're making their travel just much more fun. And I think that I'm seeing some young families around me as I'm getting older, and I see the challenges, and I see how difficult it is. It isn't just and again, finding like a fun restaurant or finding the best hotel to use, but it really is the make or break between having a successful time with your family, which has a lot of other implications obviously as well. So thank you for the time, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.